The train lurched to a stop at Loveland, Colorado in the spring of 1882, and Adelaide Cunningham stepped onto the platform clutching her carpetbag with white knuckles, scanning the crowd for a man she had never seen before, but whose letters had promised her a new life far from the suffocating walls of Boston society. She was 22 years old and had spent the last 3 months of travel convincing herself that marrying a stranger was better than dying slowly in her aunt's parlor, where the air itself seemed to press against her lungs until she could barely breathe. The mountains rose in the distance, snow-capped and majestic, and for the first time since leaving Massachusetts, Adelaide felt something loosen in her chest. A tall man approached, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair and eyes the color of weathered leather. "Miss Cunningham." His voice was deep and careful, as though he were approaching a skittish horse. "I'm Samuel Rutherford. We've been corresponding." Adelaide nodded, studying the man who would become her husband. He was older than she had imagined, perhaps 30, with a face lined by sun and wind. His hands were calloused, his clothes dusty from the trail, but his eyes held a kindness that made her shoulders relax slightly. "Mr. Rutherford, I am pleased to finally make your acquaintance. Just Samuel, if you don't mind." He reached for her bag and she let him take it. "The Reverend is expecting us at 4 o'clock. I've got a wagon waiting. The ranch is about an hour outside town." They were married in a small church that smelled of pine and beeswax, with the Reverend's wife and the general store owner serving as witnesses. Adelaide wore the same navy traveling dress she had arrived in, her auburn hair pinned beneath a simple hat. Samuel's hand was warm when he slipped the thin gold band onto her finger, and when the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, Samuel kissed her cheek with such gentleness that Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes. The ride to the ranch was quiet. Samuel pointed out landmarks, his voice steady as he explained the boundaries of his property: the creek that ran through the eastern pasture, the stand of cottonwoods where he'd built his house 7 years ago. Adelaide listened, watching the vast open sky stretch above them in shades of blue she had never seen in Boston. The air smelled of grass and earth and something wild she could not name. When they arrived, the sun was beginning its descent toward the mountains. The ranch house was modest, a single-story structure of rough-hewn logs with a shingled roof and a small covered porch. Samuel helped her down from the wagon, carrying her bag inside. The interior was simple but clean. One large room served as kitchen and living area with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A door led to what Adelaide assumed was the bedroom. The windows were small, the ceiling low. The walls seemed to press inward. "It is not much," Samuel said, watching her face, "but it is sturdy. Keeps out the cold in winter, stays cool in summer." Adelaide set her reticule on the rough wooden table, her breathing suddenly shallow. The room felt impossibly small, the air thick despite the open door behind them. "It is very nice," she managed, though her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Samuel showed her where he kept supplies, explaining his routines with the patience of a good teacher. He had 2 ranch hands who worked the cattle, he told her, but they stayed in the bunkhouse beyond the barn. He raised beef cattle, sold them twice a year at market. It was hard work but honest. As darkness fell, Samuel lit lamps and began preparing a simple supper of bacon and beans. Adelaide tried to help, but her hands trembled as she reached for plates. The walls seemed closer now, the shadows deeper. Her chest felt tight, her breath coming in short gasps. "Are you all right?" Samuel's voice cut through the buzzing in her ears. "I need air." Adelaide pushed past him, stumbling onto the porch. She gripped the railing, gulping down the cool evening air as though she had been drowning. Above her, Stars were beginning to emerge, countless pinpoints of light against the darkening sky. Her breathing gradually slowed. Samuel appeared beside her, concern etched across his features. What happened? Adelaide could not meet his eyes. How could she explain something she barely understood herself? I apologize, I just needed a moment. Have you eaten today? On the train, yes. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Come inside when you are ready. No rush. Adelaide remained on the porch long after he went back inside. She could hear him moving about, the clatter of dishes, the scrape of a chair. The stars grew brighter as the sky darkened to black, more stars than she had ever imagined existed. In Boston, the city lights dimmed the heavens, but here they blazed with fierce clarity. Eventually, hunger drove her inside. Samuel had set out food and was sitting at the table, reading a worn book by lamplight. He looked up when she entered, gesturing to the chair across from him. They ate in silence, Adelaide forcing down food that tasted like sawdust in her dry mouth. I will show you the bedroom, Samuel said when they finished. He led her to the other room, which held a bed covered with a colorful quilt, a wardrobe, and a washstand. I will sleep out here tonight. Give you time to settle. That is not necessary. Adelaide's voice was barely a whisper. We are married, even so. Samuel's expression was gentle. There is no rush for anything, Adelaide. We are strangers yet. That takes time to change. He left her alone, closing the door behind him. Adelaide stood in the center of the room, looking at the bed, the walls, the single small window. Her breathing quickened again. She tried to lie down, but the moment she did, panic clawed at her throat. The ceiling pressed down, the walls closed in. She could not catch her breath. Adelaide threw off the blanket and stumbled to the door, flinging it open. Samuel looked up from where he sat by the fireplace, surprise crossing his face. I cannot, Adelaide gasped. I cannot sleep in there. Samuel stood quickly. What is wrong? Are you ill? I need to be outside. The words tumbled out desperately. I am sorry. I know it makes no sense. But I cannot breathe in there. I need the sky. The sky? Samuel looked baffled. Adelaide wrapped her arms around herself, shame burning through her. In Boston, I slept in the attic. There was a window that opened to the roof. Every night I would climb out and sleep there under the stars. My aunt never knew. She would have thought me mad. Perhaps I am mad. How long have you done this? Since I was a child. Since my parents died and I went to live with my aunt in that house with its heavy curtains and locked windows and air that never moved. Adelaide's voice broke. I tried to stop. I tried to be normal, but I cannot. I cannot sleep inside. I feel as though I am being buried alive. Samuel studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Adelaide waited for him to tell her she was broken, that he wanted to send her back, that their marriage was a mistake. Instead, he said, "Wait here." He disappeared into the bedroom, emerging with the quilt and several blankets. "Come with me." Adelaide followed him outside, confusion mingling with relief at being under the open sky again. Samuel spread blankets on the porch, creating a makeshift bed, then handed her the quilt. Will this do for tonight? Tomorrow I will think of something better. Tears spilled down Adelaide's cheeks. You are not angry. Why would I be angry? Samuel shook his head. People are how they are, Adelaide. I've known horses that could not abide being in stalls, had to sleep in the pasture no matter the weather. Did not make them bad horses, just different. But I am your wife. I should be able to sleep in a proper bed like a proper woman. You are my wife, Samuel agreed, and you will sleep where you can actually sleep. That seems proper enough to me. He paused, then added softly, I did not bring you here to make you miserable, Adelaide. I brought you here hoping we might both be less lonely. That only works if you can breathe. Adelaide sank onto the porch bed, pulling the quilt around her shoulders. Above, the stars blazed in their thousands. "Thank you," she whispered. Samuel nodded, heading for the door. "Good night, Adelaide. If you need anything, I will be just inside." "Samuel," he turned back. "Why did you send for a mail-order bride? A man like you could surely find a wife here." A sad smile crossed his face. "Not many women want ranch life. It is lonely, hard work, far from civilization. And I am not much for social gatherings and courting rituals. Seemed easier this way. More honest, maybe." After he went inside, Adelaide lay back, looking up at the infinite sky. The porch boards were hard beneath her, but her breathing came easy, her chest light. For the first time since leaving Boston, she felt something like hope. She woke to the sound of hammering. The sun was already well above the horizon, flooding the valley with golden light. Adelaide sat up, disoriented, then remembered where she was. The blankets had kept her warm through the cool spring night, and she had slept more deeply than she had in months. Samuel was working near the corner of the porch, measuring boards and making marks with a pencil. He looked up when she stirred. "Morning. Coffee is inside if you want it." "What are you doing? Building you a proper bed out here. Cannot have you sleeping on bare boards." He gestured to a pile of lumber beside him. "I've got enough wood. Should have something decent by evening." Adelaide stood, smoothing her wrinkled dress. "You do not have to do that." "I know I do not have to. I want to." Samuel's eyes met hers, serious and kind. "Like I said, no point in you being miserable." Inside, Adelaide found coffee still warm on the stove and biscuits wrapped in a cloth. She ate standing by the window, watching Samuel work. His movements were efficient and practiced, the hammer ringing out in steady rhythm. The two ranch hands appeared, a younger man with black hair and an older one with a grizzled beard. Samuel spoke with them briefly, pointing toward the western pasture, and they rode off. Adelaide washed her face and changed into a fresh dress, then ventured outside. "Is there something I can do to help?" Samuel looked up, wiping sweat from his brow. "Can you hand me those nails?" He pointed to a tin beside the lumber pile. They worked together through the morning, Samuel building and Adelaide assisting where she could. He was creating a platform bed on the porch, raised off the ground with a solid frame. As the structure took shape, Adelaide felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the spring sun. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked as they paused for water at midday. Samuel considered the question, leaning against the porch railing. "My ma used to say that kindness costs nothing but means everything. Besides, you left everything you knew to come here and marry a stranger. Least I can do is make sure you have a decent place to sleep." He paused. "Tell me about Boston. What was it like?" Adelaide looked out at the mountains. "Crowded. Dark. My aunt's house was full of heavy furniture and thick carpets and curtains that blocked out the sun. She believed fresh air was dangerous, that young women should be protected from the elements. I felt like a plant trying to grow in a cellar." "What happened to your parents?" "Cholera when I was 9. They had taken me to visit relatives in New York. I survived. They did not." Adelaide's voice was flat, the old grief a dull ache rather than a sharp pain. "My aunt was my only living relative. She took me in out of duty, not love. She spent 12 years trying to mold me into a respectable lady who would make a good match, but I was always wrong. Too tall, too opinionated, too strange. No man in Boston would have me." "Their loss," Samuel said simply. "You seem just right to me." Adelaide looked at him in surprise, and Samuel ducked his head, suddenly bashful. "I mean, you are easy to talk to, and you hand me nails at the right time. That is important in a wife." She laughed, the sound surprising them both. "High praise indeed." Samuel grinned, and Adelaide realized he was handsome when he smiled, his whole face transforming. "Come on. Let us finish this bed before dark." By evening, a sturdy platform bed stood on the porch, complete with a wooden frame and even a simple headboard. Samuel had lined it with extra blankets for softness, and Adelaide's pillow from the bedroom now rested at one end. "It is perfect," Adelaide said, running her hand over the smooth wood. "Thank you, Samuel. There is one more thing." Samuel disappeared around the side of the house, returning with a long piece of canvas. "In case of rain, we can string this up as a cover. Won't block your view of the stars on clear nights, but it will keep you dry if weather comes in." That night, Adelaide lay in her new porch bed with the quilt pulled up to her chin, watching the stars wheel overhead. She could hear Samuel moving inside the house, banking the fire, preparing for sleep. Tomorrow, she thought, she would start learning to be a rancher's wife. But tonight, under the vast Colorado sky, she simply breathed. The days fell into a rhythm. Adelaide woke early, heated water for coffee, and learned to make Samuel's breakfast before he headed out to work the cattle. She cleaned the small house, discovering that Samuel was tidy by nature, everything in its place. She learned to bake bread in the cast iron stove, to churn butter, to tend the small vegetable garden behind the house that Samuel had started but neglected. The ranch hands, Cal and Jedediah, came to the house for midday dinner. They were respectful but curious, clearly uncertain what to make of Samuel's new wife who slept on the porch. Adelaide ignored their glances, serving them hearty meals and listening to their stories about ornery cattle and broken fences. Samuel rode in at dusk each evening, covered in dust and smelling of horses and sweat. He would wash at the pump behind the house, then join Adelaide for supper. They talked while they ate, careful conversations where they learned each other's edges. Adelaide discovered that Samuel had been born in Missouri, that his father had been a farmer who lost everything in the financial panic of 1857. The family had come west when Samuel was 16, looking for a fresh start. His parents had died of influenza within months of each other 5 years ago, leaving Samuel alone with the ranch they had built together. "Loneliness creeps up on you," Samuel said one evening as they sat on the porch after supper, watching the sun paint the mountains gold and pink. "You do not notice it at first. You are too busy with work. But then winter comes and the days are short and you realize you have not had a real conversation in weeks. That is when I wrote to the matrimonial agency." "Were you nervous?" "When you sent the letter." "Terrified," Samuel admitted. "Thought maybe no one would answer. Or that whoever did would take one look at this place and get right back on the train." He glanced at her. "Did not expect someone like you. Someone broken. Someone brave." Samuel's voice was firm. "Takes courage to leave everything you know for a chance at something better. Takes courage to tell the truth about who you are, even when it makes you vulnerable." He paused. "I am glad you came, Adelaide, even if you do sleep outside like a wild thing." Adelaide felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I am glad I came too." As spring deepened into early summer, Adelaide felt herself changing. The constant work of ranch life strengthened her body, the clean air and sunlight bringing color to her pale Boston complexion. She learned to ride, Samuel patiently teaching her on his gentlest mare, and discovered she loved the feeling of moving across the open land with the wind in her hair. She also discovered that she loved watching Samuel work. There was a quiet competence to everything he did, a steadiness that made her feel safe in ways she never had before. He was patient with the animals, kind to his men, and unfailingly gentle with her, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. One warm June evening, Samuel joined her on the porch after supper instead of going inside as usual. "Mind if I sit with you?" "Not at all." Adelaide made room on the wooden platform, and Samuel settled beside her, leaning back against the headboard. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge as the sky darkened. "Tell me about the roof in Boston," Samuel said eventually. "What was it like?" Adelaide smiled at the memory. "There was a widow's walk on top of the house. My aunt kept it locked, but I found the key when I was 10. At night, after everyone was asleep, I would climb up there. You could see across the whole neighborhood, all the rooftops and chimneys. But mostly I looked up. The stars were dim, nothing like here, but they were there. They made me feel less trapped. Did you ever get caught?" "Once. My aunt's housekeeper found me at dawn, asleep on the roof. She threatened to tell, but I begged her not to. I told her I would die if I could not go there." Adelaide's voice went soft. "I meant it. I truly believed I would die in that house if I could not touch the sky." "The housekeeper must have believed me too, because she never told. She just made me promise to be careful." Samuel reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm around hers. "You will never have to beg for sky here, Adelaide. I promise you that." Adelaide looked at their joined hands, then up at Samuel's face, shadowed in the starlight. Something shifted in her chest, a lock turning. "Samuel, you do not have to sleep inside anymore. If you want to join me out here, I would not mind." "Are you certain?" "Yes." Adelaide squeezed his hand. "We are married, and you have been so patient with me. I want to be a true wife to you." Samuel's expression was tender. "Adelaide, there is no rush. We have all the time in the world, I know, but I want to." She hesitated, then added quietly, "I think I am falling in love with you." Samuel went very still. "You think? I know I am." Adelaide's heart was pounding. "I did not expect it to happen so fast, but you have been nothing but kind to me. You built me this bed so I could breathe. You never once made me feel strange or broken. How could I not love you?" Samuel cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle. "I have been in love with you since the day you stepped off that train looking like you wanted to run back to Boston but stood your ground anyway. You are the bravest, most honest person I have ever met, Adelaide Rutherford. And if you will have me, I would be honored to share this porch bed and every night after." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Adelaide felt the last of her walls crumble. When they drew apart, she was smiling. "Should we go inside, for privacy?" "Only if you want to. The hands sleep in the bunkhouse, and the nearest neighbor is 3 miles off. No one is going to see anything out here but the stars." So they stayed on the porch, and Adelaide discovered that making love under the infinite sky with a good man was something close to heaven. Samuel was careful and tender, attuned to her every breath and sigh, and when they finally lay tangled together under the quilts, Adelaide felt whole in a way she never had before. "I never thought I could have this," she whispered against Samuel's shoulder. "Someone who accepts me as I am. A place where I can breathe." "You have it now," Samuel promised, pressing a kiss to her forehead, "for as long as you want it. Forever then. Forever it is." The summer passed in a haze of happiness. Adelaide threw herself into ranch life, learning everything she could. She helped Samuel and the hands with the branding, though the smell and noise overwhelmed her at first. She learned to preserve vegetables, to make cheese, to mend clothes and harnesses. The work was endless but satisfying in ways her life in Boston never had been. More importantly, she learned Samuel. She learned that he was grumpy before his first cup of coffee, that he hummed when he was content, that he had a scar on his left shoulder from being kicked by a horse when he was 17. She learned that he loved to read but was embarrassed by it, thinking it unmanly, until Adelaide convinced him to read aloud to her in the evenings. They worked their way through novels and newspapers, Samuel's deep voice bringing the words to life as they lay together in the porch bed. The ranch hands grew accustomed to Adelaide's presence. Cal, the younger one, developed a shy fondness for her cooking, always asking hopefully if she had made pie. Jedediah, Initially skeptical of a city woman's ability to handle ranch life, grudgingly admitted that Adelaide had backbone after watching her help deliver a difficult calf without flinching. In late August, a letter arrived from the matrimonial agency, forwarding a message from Adelaide's aunt. Samuel found Adelaide sitting at the kitchen table, the letter crumpled in her fist, tears streaming down her face. "What happened?" Samuel knelt beside her chair, alarm clear in his voice. "My aunt is dead." Adelaide's voice was hollow. "She passed in July. Her lawyer wanted to inform me." "There is a small inheritance," he says. "Not much, but mine." "I am sorry," Samuel said, pulling her into his arms. "Even if she was not kind to you, she was family." "I feel terrible," Adelaide sobbed against his chest. "I should be sad, but mostly I just feel guilty. Guilty that I am relieved. Guilty that I am happy here when she is dead. What kind of person does that make me?" "A human one," Samuel said firmly. "She did not treat you well, Adelaide. You do not owe her your grief. You can feel however you feel about it." Adelaide clung to him, letting herself cry for the complicated tangle of her emotions. Samuel held her, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soft comfort. When the storm finally passed, Adelaide pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I am keeping the inheritance," she said. "Does that make me mercenary?" "It makes you practical. That money is yours. You should have it." "I want to use it to improve the ranch. We could build a bigger barn, maybe hire another hand for the winter." Samuel looked at her for a long moment. "Adelaide, that money is yours to do with as you wish. You do not have to spend it on the ranch." "I know I do not have to. I want to." Adelaide took his hands. "This is my home now, Samuel. I want to invest in our future, unless you would rather I did not." "I would be grateful for it," Samuel admitted, "but only if you are certain." "I have never been more certain of anything." They used the inheritance to hire another ranch hand, a young man named Thomas, who was willing to work for room and board while learning the trade. They also bought lumber for the new barn and several more head of cattle. The ranch was growing, and Adelaide felt pride swell in her chest every time she looked at their expanding herd. As autumn painted the aspen trees gold and the nights grew cold, Samuel built a small roof over Adelaide's porch bed, angled so she could still see the stars but sheltered enough to protect from snow. He also rigged a stove pipe to extend heat from the fireplace, creating a warming system that kept the porch bearable even as temperatures dropped. "You are going to spoil me," Adelaide teased as Samuel tested the heating system, adjusting the dampers. "That is the plan," Samuel said, pulling her close. "Cannot have my wife freezing to death out here. I would come inside before that happened. Would you, though?" Samuel's eyes were warm with affection. "You are stubborn as a mule, Adelaide Rutherford. Look who is talking." Adelaide kissed him, still marveling at how natural it felt, how right. In October, Samuel took her to town for the harvest festival. Adelaide had been to Loveland a few times since her arrival, always on practical errands, but this was different. The whole town turned out, with music and dancing and long tables groaning with food. Women Adelaide had only nodded to before approached her, curious about Samuel's mail-order bride. Some were kind, welcoming her warmly. Others were coolly polite, clearly disapproving. Adelaide held her head high, remembering that she had survived Boston society. These women were nothing compared to her aunt's friends. "You doing all right?" Samuel asked as they watched couples dancing in the town square. "Yes, some of them think I am strange." "You are strange." "I like that about you." Samuel grinned at her outraged expression. "Come on, dance with me." "I do not know these dances. Neither do half the people here. We will figure it out together." They joined the dancers, Samuel leading her through a lively reel. Adelaide stumbled over the steps, laughing as Samuel caught her, and for a moment she forgot to worry about what anyone thought. She was happy. That was all that mattered. A woman about Adelaide's age approached as they caught their breath between dances. She had dark hair and a friendly smile. "You are Adelaide, right? Samuel's wife. I am Margaret Porter. My husband owns the feed store." "It is nice to meet you," Adelaide said cautiously. "I just wanted to say welcome. I know some of the women can be a bit stuffy, but do not let them bother you. Samuel is a good man, and anyone can see he is happy with you." Margaret lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Also, I heard a rumor that you sleep outside. Is that true?" Adelaide stiffened, waiting for judgment. "Yes." "That is wonderful. I am terribly jealous." Margaret laughed at Adelaide's surprise. "I love being outdoors, but my husband is convinced night air is unhealthy. You must tell me what it is like, sleeping under the stars every night." They talked for nearly an hour, Margaret asking genuine questions and Adelaide answering honestly. It felt like finding water in a desert, discovering someone who did not think she was mad. When Margaret's husband called her away, she squeezed Adelaide's hand. "Come visit me sometime. I would love to hear more about Boston." "I will," Adelaide promised, meaning it. On the ride home, Adelaide leaned against Samuel's shoulder, content despite her weariness. "Thank you for taking me." "You don't have to thank me. I am your husband. Of course I take you to town. Not just for that, for everything. For building me a bed and not caring what people think and dancing with me even though I have 2 left feet." Adelaide tilted her head to look up at him. "For loving me." Samuel kissed the top of her head. "Easiest thing I have ever done." Winter came with its first snow in November, soft flakes drifting down to blanket the valley in white. Adelaide woke to find herself, and the bed covered in a thin layer of powder. The world transformed into something magical. Samuel had already been up for hours, tending to the animals, but he had left coffee warming on the stove and a note telling her to stay bundled up. Adelaide stood on the porch, wrapped in quilts, watching the snow fall. The mountains were invisible behind the white curtain, the familiar landscape made new and strange. She felt no urge to go inside, no panic at the cold. The porch bed was her sanctuary, and even winter could not drive her from it. Samuel appeared through the snow, leading his horse to the barn. He looked up and saw her standing there, a laugh bursting from him. "You look like a snow ghost. Come see," Adelaide called, her breath misting in the frozen air. Samuel climbed the porch steps, shaking snow from his coat. "Adelaide, it is freezing out here." "I know, it is wonderful." She pulled him close, sharing the warmth of her quilts. "Look how quiet everything is, like the whole world is holding its breath." Samuel wrapped his arms around her, and they stood together watching the snow fall, 2 figures outlined against the white. "You are something else, Adelaide Rutherford," he murmured. "I hope you know that. So you keep telling me." The winter was hard but not unbearable. The heating system Samuel had rigged kept the porch comfortable most nights, and on the truly brutal ones, Adelaide reluctantly moved inside, though she left the door open and positioned herself where she could see the stars through the window. Samuel never complained, just held her close and told her stories until she relaxed enough to sleep. They lost 2 calves to the cold and had to dig through snow to reach the hay stores more than once. But the ranch survived, and so did they. Adelaide learned to make hearty stews that stuck to your ribs, to bake bread that filled the house with warmth and the smell of yeast. She learned to play cards with Samuel and the hands during the long evenings, their easy banter a comfort against the howling wind outside. In February, Adelaide realized her monthly courses were late. She said nothing at first, not wanting to raise hopes that might be dashed. But when another month passed with no sign, she finally told Samuel. He was mucking out stalls when she found him in the barn, and the look of wonder that crossed his face when she spoke the words made her heart clench. "A baby? Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor. But yes, I think so." Samuel dropped the pitchfork and swept her into his arms, spinning her around despite the barn's confines. "We are going to have a baby. Samuel, put me down. You will hurt yourself." But Adelaide was laughing, her joy matching his. He set her down but kept his hands on her waist, his expression suddenly serious. "Are you happy about this? I know we have not been married long." "I am terrified," Adelaide admitted. "But yes, I am happy. Are you?" "Happier than I have any right to be." Samuel kissed her softly. "We should go to town. Have the doctor confirm it. Make sure you are healthy." The doctor in Loveland, an older man with spectacles and a kind manner, confirmed what Adelaide already knew. She was about 3 months along, he estimated, which meant the baby would arrive in early autumn. He gave her instructions on diet and rest, cautioning her against heavy lifting. "And you will need to prepare a proper nursery," the doctor added. "Infants need to be kept warm and protected from drafts." Adelaide's stomach clenched. A nursery? Inside the house? With walls and a roof and air that did not move? "Of course," she said faintly on the ride home. Samuel noticed her silence. "What is wrong?" "Nothing, Adelaide," she sighed. "The baby will have to sleep inside in a proper room, and I will need to be with the baby." "Which means I will have to sleep inside." The words came faster, edged with panic. "I know that is what normal mothers do. I know I will have to manage, but the thought of it makes me feel like I am suffocating." Samuel was quiet for a long moment, his hands steady on the reins. "We will figure something out." "How?" "The doctor is right. I cannot have a newborn outside in the cold." "I said we will figure something out, and we will." Samuel's voice was firm. "You are not the only one with a brain, Adelaide. Let me think on it." Adelaide wanted to argue but subsided into worried silence. She loved Samuel, loved this life they were building, but the thought of spending months trapped inside made her want to weep. Over the next weeks, Samuel became secretive, often disappearing to the barn or riding into town without explanation. Adelaide tried not to pry, but curiosity gnawed at her. What was he planning? In late April, with Adelaide's belly just beginning to show, Samuel took her hand after supper. "Come with me. I want to show you something." He led her not to the porch but around the side of the house, where an addition had been started that Adelaide had assumed was for storage. But as Samuel opened the door, Adelaide gasped. The room was perhaps 12 feet square, with large windows on 3 sides that could open wide. The fourth wall was the exterior of the house, and Samuel had cut a door through so the room was accessible from inside. But the ceiling was different. Samuel had installed a series of skylights, large panes of glass that offered a clear view of the sky above. "It is not finished yet," Samuel said, watching her face anxiously. "I still need to build the cradle and get furniture, but I thought maybe this would work. Windows you can open for air, skylights so you can see the stars, but walls to keep the baby warm and safe. What do you think?" Adelaide walked slowly around the room, taking it all in. She opened one of the windows, feeling the spring breeze on her face. She looked up through the skylights at the blue sky above. Her chest felt tight, but not with panic, with emotion. "You built this for me, for us, for our family." Samuel came to stand beside her. "I know it is not the same as being outside, but I hoped it might be close enough. That you could breathe here." Adelaide threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. "It is perfect. You are perfect. How did I get so lucky?" "I am the lucky one," Samuel said, holding her close. "You and this baby are everything I never knew I needed." They spent the next months preparing. Adelaide sewed tiny clothes and blankets while Samuel built a cradle and a rocking chair. They painted the walls a soft yellow, and Adelaide hung curtains that could be drawn for privacy but left open to let in light. Margaret Porter visited several times, bringing baby clothes her own children had outgrown and offering advice that was actually helpful. She and Adelaide had become genuine friends, their easy companionship a bright spot in Adelaide's days. Margaret never once questioned the unusual nursery, just admired the skylights and declared it the most wonderful baby room she had ever seen. As summer arrived and Adelaide's belly swelled, she found herself moving slower, tiring more easily. The ranch hands were unfailingly helpful, Cal and Jedediah carrying water and chopping wood without being asked, young Thomas taking on extra chores so Samuel could stay closer to the house. "You have good men working for you," Adelaide told Samuel one evening as they lay in the porch bed, her head on his shoulder and his hand resting on her rounded stomach. "They like you. Said any woman who sleeps outside through a Colorado winter is tougher than most men they know." Samuel pressed his palm flat as the baby kicked. "There she goes again. You think it is a girl, I think it is healthy and strong like its mother. That is all that matters." Adelaide smiled in the darkness. "Do you hope for a boy to help with the ranch?" "I hope for a healthy baby and a wife who survives childbirth." Samuel's voice went rough. "That is all I let myself hope for. I am strong, Samuel. I will be fine. Promise me. I promise." Adelaide laced her fingers through his. "I am not going anywhere. You are stuck with me." In September, 2 weeks before the doctor predicted, Adelaide's pains began. Samuel sent Cal racing to town for the doctor and Margaret while he helped Adelaide into the new room, trying to hide his terror. Adelaide gripped his hand hard enough to hurt, breathing through the contractions. "I am here," Samuel said over and over. "I am right here with you." The doctor arrived first, taking charge with calm efficiency. Margaret came soon after, bringing supplies and a steady presence that helped Samuel stay focused. The labor was long, stretching through the afternoon and into the evening. Adelaide labored under the skylights, watching clouds drift across the deepening sky, focusing on the open windows and the promise of stars to come. When the baby finally arrived, just as the first stars appeared, it was a boy. He came into the world screaming lustily, his face red and his tiny fists waving. The doctor placed him on Adelaide's chest, and she looked down at her son with wonder. "Hello," she whispered. "Hello, little one." Samuel was crying unashamedly, his hand gentle on the baby's dark head. "He is perfect. You did so well, Adelaide, so well." "What should we name him?" Adelaide asked, exhausted but glowing. "I was thinking Stephen, after my father, if you like it. Stephen Rutherford." Adelaide tested the name, smiling. "Yes, I like it very much." The doctor checked Adelaide over, declared her tired but healthy, and gave instructions for care. Margaret helped clean up while Samuel held his son, looking awestruck and terrified in equal measure. "You can do this," Adelaide said softly. "You built me a room with skylights. You can certainly handle a baby." The room did not scream or need its diaper changed. Give it time. Adelaide laughed at Samuel's horrified expression. "I am teasing. Come here. Let me see him again." That night, after the doctor and Margaret had left and the house was quiet, Adelaide nursed Stephen while Samuel sat beside them, watching with soft eyes. Through the skylights, stars blazed bright and clear. "You think he will mind sleeping in here?" Adelaide asked. "It is different from a normal nursery." "If he is anything like his mother, he will love it," Samuel said. "And if he is not, we will figure that out too, just like we figure everything else out, together, always together." The first months with Stephen were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Adelaide discovered she could sleep in the skylight room without panic, perhaps because she was too tired to care, or perhaps because Samuel had created something that truly worked for her. The baby slept in his cradle beneath the stars, and Adelaide learned to navigate motherhood with the same determination she had applied to ranch life. Samuel was an attentive father, rising in the night to bring Stephen to Adelaide for feeding, changing diapers without complaint, and walking the floor with a fussy baby so Adelaide could rest. He sang off-key lullabies and made silly faces that had even tiny Stephen seeming to smile. Cal and Jedediah were awkward around the baby at first, but young Thomas surprised everyone by being a natural. He had younger siblings back home, he explained, and was comfortable with infants. Adelaide often found him holding Stephen while she prepared meals, talking to the baby about horses and cattle as though Stephen could understand every word. As Stephen grew, Adelaide marveled at how much she loved him. She had worried, in the dark hours before his birth, that she would be a terrible mother, too strange and broken to raise a child properly. But Stephen seemed to thrive on her love, growing plump and happy, his dark eyes watching everything with intense curiosity. When Stephen was 6 months old, Margaret visited with news. "I am pregnant again," she said, smiling. "My husband is hoping for another boy, but I think it is a girl this time." "That is wonderful," Adelaide hugged her friend. "When are you due?" "June, the doctor thinks." "I was hoping you might be willing to help when the time comes. You were so calm when Stephen was born, and I get nervous during labor. Of course I will help, however I can." Margaret's baby, a girl named Emma, arrived on a warm June evening. Adelaide stayed with her throughout the labor, offering encouragement and cool cloths, holding Margaret's hand when the pains were worst. When Emma was placed in her mother's arms, Adelaide felt her own eyes sting with tears. "She is beautiful," Adelaide said. "Absolutely beautiful." "Thank you for being here," Margaret whispered. It meant everything. On the ride home, Adelaide told Samuel about the birth. "I think I would like more children, if you would." Samuel's face lit up. "How many more? Let us start with one more and see how we feel." Adelaide laughed. "Stephen is not even a year old yet." But the following spring, Adelaide was pregnant again. This time, knowing what to expect, she was less frightened. Samuel fussed over her even more than before, and Stephen, toddling now, seemed fascinated by his mother's growing belly. "Baby," he would say, patting Adelaide's stomach with his small hands. "Baby, come." "Yes, darling, the baby is coming." Adelaide smoothed his dark hair so like Samuel's. "You are going to be a big brother." Their daughter was born in October, her arrival much faster than Stephen's. Samuel barely had time to fetch the doctor before she appeared, a tiny girl with auburn hair and lungs that rivaled her brother's. They named her Anna, and she slotted into their family as though she had always been there. With 2 children, the skylight room became crowded. Samuel built another addition, this time creating a larger sleeping area with even more windows and skylights. He also constructed small beds for the children, low to the ground and surrounded by cushions in case they rolled out. "We are going to end up with a house that is all windows," Adelaide teased as Samuel measured for yet another skylight. "Would that be so bad?" Samuel kissed her forehead. "I like seeing you breathe easy." The years flowed past, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the growth of their children. Stephen grew into a serious boy who followed his father everywhere, learning to ride and rope and care for animals. Anna was fierce and independent, more likely to be found climbing trees or chasing chickens than playing with dolls. When Stephen was 7 and Anna 5, Adelaide gave birth to twin boys, much to everyone's surprise. Lucas and Matthew were identical, with mischievous grins and an uncanny ability to communicate without words. They kept the household in cheerful chaos, and Adelaide often collapsed into bed exhausted but happy. The ranch prospered. With Adelaide's inheritance as seed money and Samuel's hard work, they expanded their herd and bought adjoining land when it became available. They built a proper bunkhouse for their growing crew of ranch hands and a larger barn to house more horses. The ranch became known throughout Colorado for quality cattle and fair dealing. Through it all, Adelaide slept under the stars. She never did overcome her need for open sky, and Samuel never asked her to. Instead, as the years passed, he improved her porch bed, adding more comfort and protection without sacrificing the view she needed. In summer, the whole family sometimes slept outside, the children delighting in the adventure of it. When Stephen turned 16, tall and capable, he asked to take on more responsibility with the ranch. Samuel glowed with pride, working side by side with his son, teaching him everything he knew. Anna, at 14, declared she wanted to learn ranch management and business, not just animal husbandry. She spent hours with Adelaide, learning to keep books and negotiate prices, her quick mind grasping concepts easily. The twins, now 11, were still figuring out who they were, but they worked hard and made everyone laugh. The ranch felt alive with the energy of their children, and Adelaide sometimes had to stop and marvel at the life she had built. One evening in late summer, Adelaide and Samuel sat on the porch after the children had gone to bed. They were in their 40s now, lines etched by sun and laughter around their eyes, their hands worn from decades of work. But when Samuel took Adelaide's hand, it felt the same as it had that first night when he had built her a bed under the stars. "You ever regret it?" Adelaide asked. "Sending for a mail-order bride, getting stuck with someone as strange as me? Not for a single moment." Samuel pulled her close. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Adelaide. You and our children and this life we have built. I would not change a thing. Not even my refusal to sleep inside, especially not that. It gave me you exactly as you are, not some version of you trying to be what you think you should be." Samuel kissed her softly. "I fell in love with the woman who needed the stars. I am still in love with her." Adelaide rested her head on his shoulder, looking up at the familiar constellations. 34 years had passed since she stepped off that train, terrified and hopeful in equal measure. 3 decades of sleeping under open sky, of breathing freely, of building a life that fit her instead of trying to fit herself into someone else's life. "I love you," she said simply. "Thank you for seeing me." "Always," Samuel promised, "for as long as the stars shine." The children grew and eventually began lives of their own. Stephen married a rancher's daughter from the next county and built a house on the eastern section of the property. They gave Samuel and Adelaide 3 grandchildren who visited often, delighting in Grandma's porch bed and Grandpa's patient horse riding lessons. Anna went to Denver for schooling, something almost unheard of for a woman, but she had Adelaide's determination and Samuel's steady nature. She returned with a degree in business and promptly took over managing the ranch's finances, freeing Samuel to focus on the land and animals he loved. She married late, at 28, to a lawyer who respected her fierce intelligence and did not try to dim her light. The twins stayed close to home, taking over more of the daily operations as Samuel's joints grew stiff and his hair went silver. They were both married now, Lucas to a teacher and Matthew to the daughter of the feed store owner, Margaret's youngest. Through it all, Adelaide slept outside. Even when her bones ached and climbing in and out of bed became more difficult, she refused to give up her stars. Samuel added railings and steps, making it easier, and the whole family knew better than to suggest she move inside permanently. Some things are not negotiable, Anna told her own children when they asked why Grandma was different. Grandma needs the sky like we need water. It is just how she is made. On a crisp October evening in 1916, Adelaide and Samuel celebrated their 34th anniversary. Their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch, filling it with noise and laughter. There was food and music and dancing, and Adelaide watched her family with a heart so full she thought it might burst. "Happy?" Samuel asked, coming to stand beside her. "Happier than I ever imagined possible." Adelaide leaned into him, still fitting perfectly against his side after all these years. "You gave me everything, Samuel. A home, a family, the freedom to be myself. You gave me just as much, more probably." Samuel wrapped his arm around her waist. "Come on, let us dance one more time." They swayed together in the firelight, surrounded by people who loved them, under the vast Colorado sky. Adelaide looked up at the stars, the same stars she had watched from a Boston rooftop all those years ago when she was a desperate girl dreaming of escape. She had found more than escape. She had found home. Years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow. Samuel's health declined slowly, his strong body finally succumbing to age. He was 72 when he had a stroke that left him weakened. But even then, on warm nights when his strength allowed, he insisted on being carried to the porch so he could lie beside Adelaide under the stars. "Cannot let you sleep alone," he would say, his words sometimes slurred but his meaning clear. "Promised you forever." "You have kept that promise," Adelaide would assure him, holding his hand. "Every single day." Samuel Rutherford died on a cool spring morning in 1920, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, with Adelaide holding his hand and stars still visible through the skylight room windows. His last words were, "Look at the stars with me, Adelaide." "I see them," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I see them, my love." The grief nearly broke her. For the first time since coming to Colorado, Adelaide felt the walls close in, felt suffocation not from enclosed spaces, but from the absence of the man who had made breathing possible. Her children worried, gathering close, but Adelaide pushed through, drawing on reserves of strength she had built over decades. She continued sleeping on the porch, finding comfort in the familiar stars, in the memory of Samuel building this bed with his own hands because he loved her enough to understand what she needed. Some nights, she swore she could feel him beside her, his steady warmth a presence that death could not quite erase. Stephen ran the ranch now, with help from his siblings and the younger generation. They tried to get Adelaide to slow down, to take it easy, but she refused. There was still work to be done, still grandchildren to spoil, still life to be lived. Margaret, herself a widow now, visited often. The two women who had become friends over a shared baby's birth were now elderly together, reminiscing about husbands gone and children grown, finding comfort in each other's company. "You ever wish you had been different?" Margaret asked one afternoon as they sat on the porch, shelling peas. "That you could have been like other women." "Not for a moment," Adelaide said firmly. "Samuel loved me as I was. Our children know me as I am. Why would I wish to be different? I suppose you are right. You just seem to have such a hard time of it sometimes." All those years never quite fitting in. Adelaide looked out at the mountains, at the ranch her family had built, at the life that had been possible only because one good man had seen her truth and loved her for it. "I fit where it mattered most," she said softly. "That was enough." Adelaide lived to see her great-grandchildren born, tiny babies who looked up at the stars from her porch with wide, wondering eyes. She told them stories about their grandfather, about a time when the West was wilder and life was harder, but somehow more vivid. She taught them to appreciate open sky and honest work and love that did not try to change you. On a warm August night in 1924, Adelaide went to sleep in her porch bed at the age of 74 and simply did not wake up. Her children found her in the morning, peaceful in death, her face turned up to the sky she had loved so much. They buried her next to Samuel on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the open sky where she could see the stars for eternity. The whole county turned out for the funeral, people whose lives had been touched by the strange woman who slept outside and the man who loved her enough to build her a bed under the stars. She was happy, Anna said at the graveside, her voice strong despite her tears. That is the best thing we can say about anyone. She was strange and wonderful and completely herself, and she was happy. The ranch continued, passing through generations. Samuel and Adelaide's grandchildren and great-grandchildren kept it going, modernizing while honoring the traditions their ancestors had established. The porch bed remained, maintained carefully, a reminder of the love story that had built this place. Decades later, when those who remembered Adelaide and Samuel were themselves old or gone, new family members would ask about the bed on the porch, about why it was kept when surely it was impractical. And the oldest generation would smile and tell the story of a mail-order bride who could not breathe inside and the cowboy who built her a bed under the stars. Because that kind of love, the kind that sees you truly and loves you anyway, the kind that builds you a bed instead of asking you to change, that kind of love deserves to be remembered. It deserves to be told to children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a reminder that home is not always four walls and a roof. Sometimes home is open sky and someone who understands why you need it. The stars that watched over Adelaide's first night in Colorado, that witnessed Samuel's patient building and their growing love, those same stars shone over the ranch still. They watched new generations grow and love and struggle and triumph. They watched the land change and the world transform around it, but the porch bed remained, a testament written in wood and nails and decades of weathering. It spoke of a woman brave enough to cross a continent for a chance at breathing freely, of a man kind enough to see her need and meet it without question, of a love built not on changing each other, but on accepting each other exactly as they were. And on clear nights, when the stars blazed bright over the Colorado ranch, if you stood very quiet and listened very carefully, you could almost hear the echo of laughter, the murmur of voices telling stories, the soft sounds of two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed to be whole. That was the legacy Adelaide and Samuel left behind. Not just a successful ranch or a large family, though those were important, but the knowledge that love, real love, makes space for who you truly are. It builds you a bed under the stars instead of asking you to hide in the shadows. It sees you're strange and says it is beautiful, and that more than anything was worth remembering, worth telling, worth carrying forward into all the generations yet to come, a light in the darkness, steady as stars.